Yo, what's up guys? Mad Zach here in the studio, and today I've prepared a little bit of a video for you on, well, adding a bit of funk and soul to your beats. So we've all heard the saying, drum machines have no soul, and I used to think that was pretty funny until I realized it is completely false. And the reason why is that there's a number of ways to get a really funky and fun swing to your beats and give it quite a lot of soul. So anyways, in this video I'm going to be sharing with you 3 techniques to do that. First of all, I'm going to introduce and explain the concept of the grooves section of Ableton. Then we'll go in and create a MIDI clip and go off grid and actually just draw in something that is not on the grid but is still kind of funky. So this is like the science of being imperfect. And then thirdly, which is sort of the most straightforward and traditional, if you will, methods, I'm just going to show you how to sort of play in a groove on your MIDI controller and then use that as sort of your template for the shuffle that you want in your song. All right, so let's take a look at step 1. So first off, I'll just give you a little demonstration of what applying a shuffle to a beat sounds like. So let's create a little MIDI clip here, and we'll get that playing. A very straightforward beat. Let's grab a little hi-hat. And then let's accentuate that with a little shaker action. So right now this beat is very straightforward, and you kind of feel like you're marching to the beat of some sort of very uncompromising dictator. So before I show you the fine tuning of the different grooves, I'm just going to apply a groove so you can hear the A/B test of what it sounds like with or without. So this is a straight pattern with no groove applied at all. If you take a look here in the groove section of your MIDI clip, you can choose from the various grooves. So these 7 right here are the original grooves from the TR-909 drum machine, which is really cool. And let's check it out with the groove. So this is with and without. And I'll go through the different levels. So here's none, 2, 3. So you can see as that I go up, it starts to get more kind of like, you know, a little shuffly. And then if we wanted to just throw in a little clap there, nope, not that one. Here we go. And this same groove will be applied to any part of the MIDI clip that is contained within this one thing. So yeah, anyways, that's the concept of what a groove is and how to apply one that you already have. Now I'll show you real quick how I actually got those grooves so that you can go ahead and make your own if you want to. So here we have just an original loop that I recorded from the 909. And this is with the shuffle amount 4. So like I said, there's 7 degrees, and this is the 4th degree of shuffle on the 909. So here's the clip. The first step is to create a little loop that has of whatever you want to sample in terms of the shuffle, and just a 4-bar loop should do fine. And basically you just want to go in and make sure that you have a warp marker in front of each transient. And now it's not enough, you really have to put these warp markers, and it's not enough to just say control and warp and have it put in its own things, because as you can see here on the screen, Ableton usually doesn't actually put the transient marker right on the transient, and you need it to be perfect for this to work how you want. So what I do is I just go in here, I zoom in as far as I can, and I create a marker there, and then on each consecutive little 16th note right as the sound begins. So once you have the area that you want to sample done, and you have all of your warp marks made, then you can hit crop sample. And then we're going to right click on the clip and we say extract groove. So now if I hit this little squiggly area over here, you'll see that I have this groove that has popped up. And we can give it a custom name, for example, your mom. And then, yeah, let's see how that sounds applied to a pattern. So first, let's check out that pattern that we were just working with absolutely no shuffle or groove applied. Okay, and now let's check out our groove that we just made. So that's pretty much it. We've captured that swing from that track or that little sample, and now we can apply it to MIDI, which is really, really cool because suddenly you have all sorts of different things working together in this sort of like soulful, swingy way. And this, of course, can also be applied to not just drums, but synth lines, percussion. So let's take a look at how we could apply that same thing to a percussion loop. So here's a little percussion loop in MIDI. And here's what it sounds like normally with no groove. So it's very straight. And then we'll try out the groove we just made. And if we play these two, the beat and this together, you'll hear that even though they're both like a little bit off in this shuffly way, they still line up perfectly. So that's pretty much it, the concept in a nutshell. Up next, I'm going to show you how we can actually go into one of these MIDI clips for drums, and we'll go off grid and start drawing in things on the timeline in such a way that they have their own shuffle. So right now, the interesting thing is that even though all of these notes in our MIDI clip are perfectly on time in terms of the timeline, the groove is being applied after this step. So you can't actually see the funkiness. And you want to be able to see the funkiness for this second technique, which is why we're going to dive in a little deeper and enter stage 2 nerdiness. So I'm going to start a new clip, turn off that percussion thing. Let's just build up something really simple again here with the push. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to do is add sort of this open hi-hat thing, or just this shaker. And this is a good way of demonstrating it, because this placement, this second placement of the shaker right here is really awkward without a bit of swing. When it's on grid, it's very like, you know, this kind of motion. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm actually going to make sure that I'm in the clip here. I'm going to hit Apple 4 or Command 4 if you're on a PC. And that takes, while I can still see the grid, now I can freely move clips off the grid. So let's really focus in on this first little thing here. Okay, so let's make this loop shorter so we can really dial in on this shaker swing. And already it's sounding a lot more funky. So we can grab both of them, move them together. So once I went off grid, I selected the notes I wanted to edit, and now I'm just using these arrow keys to kind of scoot in micro increments off grid. And now if we add a clap, it'll really accentuate that. So let's go here. Maybe change that clap sound real quick. Now we can duplicate the length of this, and let's try something else. So now I'm going to add some just closed hi-hats on every single beat. pull up the velocity a bit. Okay, so right now it's very rigid again. We're gonna select them all, go off grid again. And let's just try pushing them back a little bit so they're always like slightly delayed. Okay, and we can play with those claps as well, like maybe make them a little early. Okay, so this is sort of our shuffled groove that we've created by going off grid. Now let's take a look real quick at what that would sound like if we scooted it back on grid, just so you can hear the contrast. So I'm just gonna select all those notes, go back on grid, Apple 4, and then I'm gonna quantize by hitting Apple U. So here's before. So here's quantized. And here's off grid. And you can keep messing around with this for a long time and get it really dialed. So that's technique 2, and it's also really fun because you can get really scientific and you can also create a lot of nuances where with the grooves you're always locked into this one specific way. With this methodology you can get a little bit more specific and ultimately a little bit more funky. So that's technique 2. Last and definitely not least, I'm going to basically show you how we can play something in on here, correct it a little bit in the grid if we want, and then have a groove based on that. So we'll start this new clip. Now I usually like to start with at least one element on grid. So for example, the kick. I always want the kick to be coming in right when it's supposed to. That's not where I'm going to choose to focus my shuffle. So let's throw a kick in there. And then I'm basically just going to record something. So here I have the MIDI Fighter Spectra, which I'm just going to be using to play in some of these patterns live. So hit record here. Okay, and this is pretty typical. You know, I was really feeling it in the moment, but then once I've actually recorded it, it's sounding a little bit too loose. This is a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look in here, and instead of just uniformly hitting quantize, I'm going to go in here and select the problem notes. I can see that this is the space right here. These are just a little too late, and I can scoot them a bit closer. So this can be a great way to sort of fuse something playing live with that second technique that I showed you, where you play something in, you maybe get an idea for how you want something to be off grid, but you didn't quite nail it, and so this way you can kind of doctor it up a bit. So next let's record a clap. Let's duplicate the clip, get rid of that double one. This is also a great way to find out what sorts of offness sound good. So for example, with the clap, it's sounding really cool when the clap comes just a little bit early. Just a little bit before that kick. Okay, cool. Now let's cruise over to our percussion section. Make a little loop. and recorder. Let's check this out. Looks like I may have hit this one twice. And now again, just correcting a little bit. This one's a little late. I never just hit quantize uniformly because these special little moments of imperfection are what really adds a lot of flavor to your track. So just to give you a feel, again, sort of an A/B test, this is how I played it in. And if I were just to have drawn it in on grid or to quantize it, would it sound more like this? So here's without. And here's quantized on grid. So as you can see, it's a subtle difference, but when you add this up over the course of a whole track, it really does make a big difference. And this is sort of what might make a song sound more like a robot versus something that has more of an organic and warm feel. So that is the concept of, adding a bit of funk and soul and flavor to your tracks. The cool thing is that with the sound pack that I've created in this production template, I have all of the original shuffles from the TR-909, which are the ones that I like the most. Yeah, it's pretty much the shuffle that you want. Thanks for tuning in. Mad Zach here. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time, guys.